I'm not going to talk a lot about don'ts, because if you do the do's, you don't do the don'ts, then you're okay. A couple questions to start off. How many of you have been to India? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 2, how many of you have a product, a process, a service that you think someone in India would like to make use of? All right, now have that person in mind, that image in mind, and then let's see if what I present is of any help to you in thinking how to target that audience. If you were here for the last session with Graham, you got the idea that there are 28 states, 7 territories, millions of people, growth in the country, market availability, and be patient. I represent a small global company. We have kind of a large vision. And the vision is that every student, every child should have educators who effectively teach, and that effectiveness is defined by, in the UK world, by the qualified teacher status criteria that are used for teacher licensure, teacher qualifications. So then, with that concept in mind, we have a simple mission. We're going to provide professional development for educators everywhere in the world. Okay, we're a small global company that happens to, over the last 20 or so years, have achieved a few things. We basically, our focus is on intercultural professional development. We've had over 33,000, students, teachers being placed on teaching practice and other education professional development experiences in 67 countries. They come from a bunch of places, a number of universities. India, for us, is, if you will, a small piece of that, but it fits within what Graham was talking about, that it takes time to build the relationships and the networks that will offer you the opportunity to do business in India. So we've had, over this period of time, now it's 38 with a student who's leaving next month, from 12 universities in the US and the UK. 24 of them have assisted teachers of English, 13 are practicum students, and we've worked in 12 schools in 3 cities in India. I should note that all of the photos you see in here are either of our participants or schools that we've worked with. This particular school I kind of love because it actually was a former horse barn for racing horses, and the horse stalls have all been turned into classrooms, and it's in the middle of Vadodara, which is a neat school and works well. Following on what Graham was saying, hey, why India? Now, you can guess that I'm an American, I'm not English, but the company I have, Educators Abroad, is a British company. And when I was asked to do this presentation, I said, well, wait, India's a former colony. You folks do the same sports. You've got the games coming up, and you've got so many connections. You've got the same language. We've got the same kind of, yes, different cultural backgrounds, most certainly, but at the same time, as Graham was pointing out, a stability in the country, a judicial system in the country, and all the rest of it that is something common to the core of what you know. My visits to India over this period of time have demonstrated to me that it is a very dynamic society, and I really wish to focus on the idea that educators are entrepreneurs in India. They aren't just doing their job, they're thinking far beyond that, and they working with entrepreneurs in the community and country. You will see that it is an exciting time to be doing business in India. You can be successful. Now, I look at change as the reality of India. Now, Graham pointed out, and he's very right, that it takes time with what you're doing. We placed 2 students in Mira the Happy School. The Mira School started by a woman who had a mentally challenged child, and there was no school, no educational opportunity for that child. So she created her own school for challenged students. You call them special needs students, but she created her own school. It had 3 rooms. We had students from America working in her school and learning a lot about the community, the culture, and those little experiences of walking down the street, going to the school where the people are living under tarps with absolutely nothing to their lives in relative to what we have, and inviting the students in to have a cup of tea. Very personal, very connecting people at all levels. Well, Mira now has this school building up in the top right that she's functioning from. Woman started, had a child, needed an education, created an opportunity. That's where she developed. I was there about a year ago and visiting at a storefront in a shopping mall. In that shopping mall, there was a group of people had taken over 2 stores. They had the whole teaching faculty for a brand new school they were going to open this past year. They had the model, that's the angled picture over there, a physical model of the building they were going to construct. And the bottom is the Global Discovery Academy. When I grow up, I'm going to be me. And that building now exists. It's a school started by Indian colleagues working in Silicon Valley in California and investing in education in India. It's a brand new school. That's the entrepreneurial experience that I'm talking about. Maybe a woman who's got a child. It's a entrepreneurial group saying, we're going to invest in education in our country, even though we're in California. They had as the architects for this, the whole spaceship kind of construct, they used Disney architects who did Disneyland. So what do you do? You've been to India, most of you, so I may be very much speaking to the choir here. But the bottom line is, we adapt to the place we're going to. We don't walk into it saying, you are going to be me. And that is the beginning of the joy of becoming part of a country, part of a culture, and working with the people to market your products, to interact, to develop things together. Earning respect. We earn it. Again, I go back to the students walking along the street and being invited in, hi Mike, invited in to have a cup of tea by people who have nothing. They earned the respect of the people on the street. Listen, sometimes that's hard for us to do. Do we really hear what the person is saying? We may hear the words, but what's the meaning behind it? Do we understand that if I think I know what they say, I understand? No, you don't. I may be presuming what you think you're saying, but I'm not understanding you. And that's where we need to be patient. We need to take our time. We need to plant the seeds, listen to people. This gentleman over here has an idea. You hear what the idea is. I don't presume to know what he's trying to do, but with further conversation, I may come to understand it. Equally, we're asking the person that we're working with in India or wherever it may be to understand what it is we are trying to do and what we are caring about and trying to market. Expectations, critical. The people here, Hannah standing back here, expected me to do something today as a presentation. We didn't meet until this morning. Am I living up to her expectations? Well, I hope so. And I hope that I'm actually living beyond those and that she is she's agreeing with where I'm at. Never promise that which you cannot provide. Sounds simple, but you will have people saying, oh, you can do this for me, or we can do that. And the best thing you can do is say, no, I can't. Because if you can't live up to that expectation of what they think you're going to do, and it may be, can you get my relative into England? I mean, it can be something totally separate from. Can you get me this set of materials? Would you help me with this computer? Whatever it may be, and you go, that's not my area, I'm going to say no. And if that doesn't work for us, then that's where it becomes. As I've said, fulfill expectations beyond expectation. And then trust in serendipity. How is it that I happen to be standing here? It's because Tony brought me to BET 2 years ago. It seems that somewhere on there, Educators Abroad was mentioned. And Hannah had that in some sort of list, and she contacted me. Would I ever have expected that connection from having just been a person walking around the halls of this building? No. But that's where serendipity, as I look at all of our connections, have really come through. Personal side of it, your attitude is what's going to matter about everything. You get to India and you get off the plane and you're not where you're supposed to be because there was a problem with the plane, and you come up to immigration, you've checked that your visa is okay, and you come up to immigration and the man's looking at it and he hands it to the supervisor, and the supervisor says, and I quote, deport him back to Singapore. Now that was one of my entry points to India. Now, my attitude was kind of like, oh, well, no, it wasn't. Like, okay, that gentleman had made a decision, and for him to change that decision would be a loss of face for him because he was the supervisor and he'd said, deport him. How could he then allow me to get in? Well, end of story is I did get in, have special note in my passport, spent a week getting clearance in the local area, and actually was provided resident status, which then I left the next morning and handed it all in to the smiles of everyone. Attitude matters, how you succeed. If it ain't fun, it ain't worth doing. Simple. And it'll come across if it's not. Mutually long-term relationships that work over time. I started by meeting a colleague at an international conference. She invited me to India. That's 13 years ago or so. We're still connected. We're still doing things together. And you develop that personal kind of relationship. It's not business, it's personal. And you make that commitment to the long term, which allows you then, of course, to earn the trust of the people you're working with. You know, how do you earn trust? Well, it's a risk. I will trust you, sir, but until you do something that doesn't live up to that trust, we're okay. Equally, you have to trust me, and that's where we were talking again this morning, Mike. You have to trust me, and I have to not only have earned your respect, but equally have earned your trust. Does network say it all to you? If there's anything to focus on, what are your goals? That's why I asked you, have you been to India? Do you have an idea of a product that you think someone in India will want? So, okay, what's your goal? But what's the context you are working in? You're under pressure. My boss says I have to sell X. I'm really in trouble. I'm not doing well. Or is it, hey, I've got time, I've got the right product, I can explore possibilities, use UKTI to evolve our business plan. Same thing is happening on the other side. Is it the person needs a promotion? Does the person need to meet a quota? Does the person have children that are in trouble? Does the person have a family that is growing? And whatever it may be, what is going on in the context of the person you're working with? And understanding that across the cultures is a fascinating way to come to know people in other cultures, develop those friendships and those connections, and be able to determine those goals that work for you and work for them. And if there aren't mutually good goals there, if there aren't expectations that match, then obviously it should be move on. So here's maybe a little story about how it happens and how it takes time. I went to Vadodara a little bit over a year ago. I was introduced to a head of a school in Vadodara, and in talking to him, I learned that there were Indian international schools. Now, I hadn't thought about that, but there are about 200 of them. And he'd been the head of an international school in Japan. And then if you think about it, in the Indian diaspora, you're looking at the Middle East, you're looking at East and Southern Africa, and you've got a whole range of schools out there. And then, totally separate, I went to a UKTI part organized with the Dubai Education Commission session on opening schools in Dubai. And in the hallway, having a cup of coffee, just like we're doing around here, met a man. He owns 3 of those schools. Well, then I left the country. He happened to show up at a Council of British International Schools international meeting where he happened to stop by a table that we had there and met some of our other colleagues. So I then checked with the man I'd met in Vadodara and said, oh, are you part of that school network working with this gentleman? Yes, I am. And he then spoke to the owner of the school, validating us. So a visit in India, a connection in London, a check through that validated the legitimacy of who Craig was and educators abroad has led to arrangements being in process for guiding professional development for teachers in his schools. Well, we're 2 years into doing that. It may be the 7 or 10 years before it actually happens within that context. So you be patient. Well, interested in working together? That's called networking. That's who we are. And I've taken my 20 minutes.